Today, a Twitter hack that really matters.
Then inside Netflix, what you don't know.
And remember Segway? It really did change the world.
I'm Alexa Scordato, and this is Future Forward.
I am Stephen Rosenbaum. Let us launch. Hey, Alexa.
Hey, Steve.
So I think this is going to be a fun one. And I would like to, let's just say right up top, if you're watching this live on Facebook or YouTube and you want to ask questions, join the conversation, jump in, just comment, and we can bring those comments into the feed, which would be fun and interesting. And I know last week we promised a guest, but to be honest, I just didn't have time to go looking for a guest. So
people are busy.
Yeah, people are busy and a little zoomed out, which we understand. But this is not Zoom. This is StreamYard. So you could be zoomed out and still hang out with us. So let's just start right at the top with the Twitter thing, because the Twitter thing is I think maybe more important than people understand. So if you've been living under a rock and didn't know that Twitter got hacked, here's the précis of what was reported, and then I'll tell you why I think it's more. So Twitter got hacked last week, and a whole bunch of big celebrity names, all Democrat names, all no famous Republicans, essentially tried to get people to send Bitcoin to a Bitcoin scam. And I guess $100,000 worth of knuckleheads sent Bitcoin to whoever this scammer was.
$180,000 worth.
Yeah.
So it's like 20 Bitcoin.
So tell me why you think there's something suspicious here. Like, I think there's something not entirely self-evident here.
I mean, like the choosing of the accounts was interesting. Like, you think about sort of what it took to make this operation possible, and not that $180,000 isn't anything, but it's actually little compared to almost the damage I think someone could have caused having access to the likes of Donald Trump and Barack Obama's Twitter account, Elon Musk, etc. Like, I don't know. I probably, if I were a evil villain and wanted to cause chaos in the world, I probably would have done more than just acquired 20 Bitcoin.
So I agree, and I actually think what's troubling about it is, like, if you're really trying to cause trouble, you don't want to be noticed, right? Like, the idea is you don't want to be public. You want to be, you could have gone one niche below to people with big accounts that aren't famous and done something a little bit more subtle, and it would have taken way longer to get it noticed and stopped. So, like, pick, a Kardashian. Well, they're pretty famous. I don't know. I'm trying to think of like somebody that has a huge following, but wouldn't set off the fire alarm of a former president of the United States.
Yeah, and again, I just feel like $180,000. Like, I've seen GoFundMes that are more viral, raise more money in a shorter period of time. So it was weird. And then the New York Times article actually had direct correspondence with people who are involved via Discord, which also kind of blew my mind as I was reading that story.
Yeah. So we're involved in pulling off the hack.
Yeah. So there was a 21-year-old kid whose username was LOL, LOL.
Yeah.
And then there was like a 19-year-old British kid who lives with his mom. And what was his username? Something like extremely anxious or something like that. So, yeah, I mean, they contacted the New York Times.
And they were able to prove that it really was them and it wasn't just a goof?
Yeah, they sent screenshots of their back and forths, and everything sort of lined up.
Yeah, I think, to me, it's like, this is more a statement. This is like a warning shot of saying, just like, we could have set off a nuclear bomb, but instead we just left it in Times Square ticking. But it was like what? So I just found myself thinking about Orson Welles and War of the Worlds.
Interesting.
So if Donald Trump's account were to tweet, there are incoming warheads that are going to hit Chicago in 15 minutes. You know, or something. I could make up a whole series of equally terrible things. But if somebody tweeted something maliciously terrible, like no amount of saying no, that's fake, don't believe that, would like
Reverse it in real time.
Would reverse it in real time. Exactly right.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of there's so many implications to this story. One is, I guess, the threat to national security that sort of these public platforms present. Obviously, made more extreme with the likes of President Trump and his usage. Second is, I think we often take for granted that the software that we're using is vulnerable. And just because Twitter is a publicly traded company does not mean that it is immune to hacks. And yeah, I mean, I think if you read sort of what happened, there are a group of select Twitter employees who were manipulated into surrendering access to Twitter's internal support tools. And when you look at what these employees had access to, they had the ability to obviously change passwords, access direct messages, download data, see personal emails and phone numbers. I mean, it really sort of humanizes the experience of software, which is like, this is a company that isn't just an interface on your laptop or phone. It's not just an app. It's an organization with individuals who are delivering an experience and have an aspect of control and access into your stuff that you might not even be conscious of.
All right. At the risk of asking a naive question, if somebody is an employee at, say, Bank of America or Capital One, do they have access to your bank account?
They do. They might not necessarily have access to
do they though?
Money, but like a lot of
I guess I would assume that at that level there was two keys. Like that when you're talking about getting into some, like I guess well, you said a number of Twitter employees, so maybe that's the answer. But it's just like it would seem to me that Barack Obama's account would have some kind of double verify security that a single big unhappy employee couldn't go in and screw around.
I don't know. I mean, they obviously
if it doesn't today, they're building it this weekend, right? I mean,
so verified accounts are clearly treated differently than regular accounts. Like I have a verified account and I was unable to publish a tweet when they started to investigate. They basically like locked down all verified accounts. But to the extent that they have a segment of verified accounts, like VIP accounts, like Barack Obama, and a different database and a different security system, I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's incredibly troubling, and I think it's troubling the larger philosophical question for me is, do we really want one company privately held with one CEO to have access to a publishing platform that has the ability to essentially distribute information, that could just be modestly, I mean, essentially you could argue what this reminded us as we're coming up to the election is, there are going to be hacks.
Yeah, it's not new. I think it's like we had the Equifax breach, right? Which was, people's social security numbers and credit information. This is not like the first major instance of it. It's just like one of a string of reminders that I think really forces us to evaluate, are we comfortable surrendering this much data and access to the technologies we're using?
I think this is a huge wake-up call for Twitter. And, obviously we're going to watch closely in the next couple of days, and hopefully they're going to announce some very strict and stringent protocols. And so fingers crossed, but like this is not a one-day news story, as I guess maybe the.
Yeah. And my public service announcement to listeners is change your passwords. Two-factor authentication is your friend.
Wash your hands.
Wash your hands, wear a mask. Don't use the same password for everything,
Yeah, look, I started using a password system. I won't tell you the name of it on air because I don't want people to start hacking at it. But I like that it makes super complicated passwords that I can't remember, and that it changes them automatically and does all kinds of things. I mean, it is occasionally. What?
I don't know if you use I don't know what browser you use, but Chrome actually has this new thing where if you have a stored password, like an autofill in your browser, if it is for a website that experienced a security breach or your password was sort of like exposed in some type of hack, Chrome will actually prompt you to change your password.
Interesting. Did not know that. All right, moving on to chapter 2. Let's talk about Netflix, shall we?
Yeah.
So this story came from both of us listening to some of or all of this podcast, Land of the Giants, which is a Vox Recode podcast that Peter Kafka is the co-host of, along with I don't remember the co-host's name because I remember Peter because I know Peter. Anyway, in any case, so they said they were going to do, I think, 6 or 8 hours on Netflix. And my immediate reaction was, how could there possibly be that much content? Like, I know the story. I've read the book. I get it. And it was, I thought, fascinating.
Oh, there's so many facets to it.
Maybe the one that we've talked about in previous shows, but just kind of the reminder was that for most of Netflix adult life, they woke up every morning hoping and praying that they could end up being bought by Blockbuster.
Yeah.
That was their outcome.
So much bigger, right? I mean, I forget that Netflix used to be the experience of getting a little red folder with a DVD inside. Like, it feels so primitive to even think about that experience.
All right, so
I don't even know how to play a DVD right now.
So rolling back, I think the brilliant thing that Hastings figured out early on was that the thing people hated the most about DVD rentals or VHS rentals, but the movie store, there were lots of things they liked about it. They liked the community, they liked going in, they liked browsing, but they hated the late fees.
Right.
And so the wisdom of Netflix in the red envelope period of its existence was no late fees. Keep it for as long as you want. You get, I think, up to 8, or there was some number. And when you return one, we send you the next one. Mm-hmm. But it was like, it was such a brilliantly, like, take away a pain point and win a customer.
Yep.
And then streaming came along, or didn't come along, but started to peer its, kind of head up from the clouds. And Blockbuster just essentially ignored it and said, we're Blockbuster, we're big, we have all this real estate. And Netflix figured out that they had to be in 2 businesses. Let's put aside the double naming thing disaster, Quick, whatever it was called. But, the other thing that either Sarandos or Hastings said, which I thought was fascinating, was that for once they started getting the content, what they figured out was they had to become HBO faster than HBO could become Netflix.
Yep.
I like the minute I heard that, I'm like, I'll never forget that. Like, it's a race for the winner to reinvent themselves as the feisty startup, as the feisty startup blows forward to become the winner. And
I mean, it's so smart because you were seeing, though, the rise of consolidation and sort of first mover advantage on the web, right? Like if Facebook had sort of proven its dominance that, okay, MySpace, Friendster, like all of these other social networks, like there would be one winner, right? And I think that was brilliant.
So I was at a conference years ago, and Hastings and Sarandos and a bunch of the other senior Netflix people had been coming to this conference for a bunch of years, and we ended up on the line together. And I know Hastings. We're not friends, but we've seen each other enough that we're collegial. And so I said, I have a question, and he turned and smiled, and I said, so you gave Fincher. I might actually, to be honest, it might have been Sarandos that I asked this of. I don't now remember. It was a long time ago. So you gave David Fincher, final cut on House of Cards, and he said yes. And I said, when my wife and I started watching it, we got about 15 minutes into the first episode, and there's this really brutal scene where
With the dog?
With the dog, and my wife was like, "I'm out. Shut it off." They killed the dog in the first 15 minutes, and she's like, not watching it, not going there. I said, how hard was it to see that come from the director and not say, hey, our focus group data says that really, really upsets people? And he kind of smiled and said, yeah, we were concerned about it, but final cut was final cut. And we came back to it after a week or two of, but it was specifically in there to say to the audience, we're going to cross boundaries here. Like, if you're not comfortable crossing boundaries here, watch something else.
Not even just from a content standpoint, like the dog dies, but Kevin Spacey breaks the fourth wall and addresses you as the viewer. And I feel like I remember seeing that and feeling like violated, like in my living room. I was like, whoa, this character is talking to me and this is super creepy.
So I actually have a really good story about early days of House of Cards. I was writing then for Forbes, and I wrote what I thought was a really well-reasoned and passionate argument for why Netflix was making a mistake by releasing the whole series at once. And I had it very detailed. I said, there's no water cooler. There's no chance to say to your friends, what did you see next? You're going to see next week? Everyone I made this argument for why they were making a terrible mistake by allowing people to binge watch. And the comments that I got back on that post were so vicious. Easily the most disliked article I've ever written in my life.
Wow.
Yeah. Like, essentially, old man, shut the fuck up, get off my lawn. Just like unbelievably vicious.
Okay, boomer. Before that was
and I thought about it a lot over that week, and I wrote, the only time in my journalism career I wrote a retraction. And I said in the retraction, here's how I'm watching House of Cards. First episode, my wife and I watched together. The second episode, I was in an airport getting on a plane, and she was at home. The third episode, I was traveling, and but I was doing exactly the thing that I had written people shouldn't do, which is time that I retracted it, and I'm glad I did, because I was wrong, and Hastings and Sarandos were right. The world, like the tech, essentially what they understood was anything that could be done would be done. And so either they could do it and own it, or they could be second and not own it.
Yeah, but you know what, Steve? You might be right in the long run, because what this entire trend of binging perpetuates is instant gratification culture. I want something now. And when you think about speed potentially being the enemy of truth, especially when you think about content and how it travels, like it actually started with things like this.
Look, I bought a shelf from Amazon the other day, and it was through a third-party seller, and it took 6 days to get to me. And I'm not going to lie, it made me unhappy. I needed it. I knew where it was going to go in the house.
I know.
I'm used to, and I, if I'd have shopped a little bit more carefully, I would have gotten something that was delivered in 2 days.
Yeah, and I think it's, again, there are some amazing benefits, and I also love like my Amazon Now, especially if I don't want to go out in the
Yep.
sweltering heat. It's like 90 degrees in New York. Um, but when you think about the fact that we don't wait for things anymore, or we get things so fast that we're not even aware of like the supply chain and where things come from, and we're constantly consuming, whether that's like food, alcohol, media. I mean, it is going to have these potentially unintended consequences on our lives. So
Yeah, I stick by my retraction. And the other thing that was fascinating that I knew kind of in my head, but it was interesting to hear and talk about, was the culture of Netflix. This,
oh
you
yeah, I
know,
love this. Had you, before the podcast, had you seen the Netflix deck, the culture deck?
I had.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's complicated. It's not, it's not a slam dunk. It's pretty, it's, I mean, for people that are inside, I think it's a hard culture.
I mean, it sounds really ruthless, right?
Ruthless was the word I was going for. Yeah, ruthless.
Yep. The What was the example they gave? It's a keeper test.
Yeah.
Is that what it's called? The keeper test. Basically, as a manager, your job is to decide if you have the best person in a role, and if the answer is no, then you don't keep that person. You have to exit them from the organization.
And I do have to say, given the number of people that talk about companies as families these days, and we're all in the family, we're all on the team, we're all like, I thought there was something strangely refreshing about like them saying, yeah, no, we're not a family. We're a
Oh, I
company.
love that. Actually, it's my
Yeah.
favorite part. It was
Yeah.
like just setting some boundaries, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Don't confuse, like, because at the end of the day, companies have different objectives than families, So there is a headline. There's a Netflix headline that I think maybe was what made me think now is the time to have this conversation, and that is that Ted Sarandos, who has been the head of content essentially since they bought and rolled out House of Cards, has been named co-CEO.
Yep.
Um,
So he
I
was an
think,
original content officer. He's
yeah,
responsible for the original $100 million check to acquire House of Cards.
and by the way, he's also a really good guy, like a genuinely well-liked, film-friendly guy. Some people are I'm gonna get hate mail for this because some people are, no. I mean, there's a whole drama about Netflix and screens and cinema, and whether or not movies should be in movie theaters, whether or not movies belong on movie theater screens or Netflix. I'm not going to take a side on that argument today.
It's also not even an argument we can have right now because we don't have a choice. No movie theaters, no movie screens.
Yeah, but interestingly enough, I mean, I think the only thing, no, I've seen 2 films this summer that I've paid for. I saw the Jon Stewart movie, and I paid $20 for it. I rented it, and I saw the Saturday Night Live.
Staten Island.
What?
The Staten Island King.
Yeah,
King's Staten Island.
Yeah, which I liked a lot. But it didn't have that same blockbuster. Maybe neither of those films were ever going to have that, even if they had theaters. But definitely not having a theater and a big ad push, and it's definitely a quiet movie summer, that's for sure.
I mean, Hamilton is probably the closest we're getting to a big blockbuster event.
I think that's right. Although, are they ever going to tell us what the number of views are?
Unlikely.
Yeah. But there is another thing about Netflix that I just wanted to share. I don't think this is a secret. I'm not telling any company secrets that I am aware of, but I do think it's not immediately obvious. The reason I would bet on Netflix and against essentially anyone else in the streaming space at the moment is because, in a way that no one else has quite figured out, they are a global network. I mean, I watch content from all over the world. I watch it with captions. I watch it with dub. I mean, I don't know what volume of acquisition, but the decision that they clearly made is if we want subscribers in Australia, we need to buy or produce original Australian content. Okay, now that we have Australian content, or Irish content or Canadian, we should offer that somehow to all of our viewers in some kind of a translation or dubbed format. And that's not an easy thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know the answer. This is probably public somewhere. I don't know how many different languages they translate or dub into, but it's certainly a significant number.
Yeah. I just watched the first few episodes of Indian Matchmaker.
How was it?
I mean, it's like fascinating, right? I think it's something like over 90% of marriages in India are arranged. They have two types of, they don't even call them arranged marriages. It's either a marriage or a love marriage if it's not arranged.
So and how was it how did it make its way into your language?
And there are scenes definitely set in Houston and the United States. And so there are people speaking English, but there were also a lot of scenes that took place in India, and the people were speaking their local language.
That's and when it was in a language you couldn't understand natively, how did you?
Subtitled.
Yep.
Like naturally. And then when I went to Twitter to just read some commentary, it was interesting. Like a lot of the tweets were tagging Netflix India. And so I'm just assuming that maybe they were released simultaneously. So the online discourse is actually even more another layer that adds this dimension to the viewing experience.
That's really cool.
Like American commentary versus Indian commentary.
So Pam and I have been watching Imposters. Which is an Uma Thurman kind of not detective, but like con artist scam. There are 2 seasons. It's really good. It's well written. Hadn't heard anything about it. Got no buzz that I was aware of. All right, so let's move on to chapter 3 because I want to make sure we have a few minutes to talk about Segway. Have you ever ridden a Segway?
I have not.
I have. Twice.
Oh, wait, maybe for like 5 seconds. Like I worked at a company and the CEO bought one. Like this is like 2009.
So we had a board member at one of my old companies who used to ride a Segway into the building, up the elevator, and into the board meetings.
And how did you feel witnessing that?
Made me very happy.
Okay.
I was like,
we are
on the cutting edge. So this is an article written in IEEE Spectrum, and the headline is "The Segway is dead, but its technology and vision lives on." And I think I take issue with even the headline because I think it's actually the vision has impacted the planet. I mean, so if you think about what Dean Kamen imagined, what he imagined was a social movement by which cars were replaced 20%, 30%, 100%, some meaningful number with personal transportation vehicles.
And specifically like in urban areas. Right?
And I will tell you, partly because of COVID and other things, when you look at the streets of New York, boy, oh boy, they are just a flood of electric bicycles, scooters, electric scooters, Revel, whatever they are, like
mopeds.
Yeah. Well, I guess they're mopeds. But this idea of the evolution of urban transportation is, and so I think the idea, I mean, Segway certainly popularized that idea and did so in a way that I think has changed the planet.
It just didn't reach a consumer price point where enough people were willing to shell over the $3,000 to buy one.
Yeah, and I guess I don't understand, so what does a Lime scooter cost, like at what point can a business raise enough money to essentially buy 500 scooters and leave them randomly around the city of New York? I don't think Lime is in. I think electric scooters are not in the city yet.
No, but I've been in other cities where they are, and I actually love them. I think they're awesome.
So the only time I've ever been to a city where they were was in Austin for South by Southwest, and I found them just unbelievably terrifying.
They can be scary the first time you go on it.
I know. I'd never been on one. I just think they were terrible. I mean, I just remember being out in Austin at midnight, and there was just this stream of drunken scooter riders.
Yeah,
and
see that.
And I have seen a couple of revel, accidents in the city. I mean, they're powerful motorcycles with no training that I'm aware of. They have
but surprisingly fast on them.
Yeah, but they do have helmets.
So but not on scooters, which you could really hurt yourself on.
But I digress, because I was paying homage to Dean Kamen and the Segway, which I think deserves a place in technology history that's appreciative.
Yeah, I agree. And also, I mean, his vision for what was the predecessor to the Segway, the iBot, that wheelchair that actually can go upstairs.
Yep. Yeah, no. So little known, his passion, among other things, is the U.S. robotics competition, and teaching young people how to build robots. And many, 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 many years ago, when I was running Magnify, we got into a conversation with him about being the video back end for the U.S. robotics competition. And for a variety of reasons, he had a relationship with YouTube. They said they were going to do it. We kind of we were both volunteers, so I don't know how you lose a bid with $0, but we lost the bid. And that always made me sad, because I was like, secretly, I'm a robot freak. And I was like, I wish we'd been able to be the U.S. robotics back end. And that was my argument, by the way. My argument to him was, YouTube will give you a junior executive and you'll get some storage space. If we do a deal with you, you'll get the CEO's attention, and we will love you, and we will cherish you, and we'll make you a fabulous platform.
Yeah. Oh, it's also worth noting that Dean Kamen is alive. I think a lot of people hear this thing that the founder of the Segway passed away, but it's actually the CEO of Segway's parent company who passed away riding a Segway.
So, I didn't know, what was the parent company?
It was I have to find it. Yeah, but
is he? And he's still in New Hampshire, I think. Yeah.
Jimmy Hesselden, who was a millionaire, died in a freak accident riding a Segway, and so
that's bad.
A lot of people think that I think confuse that person for Dean Kamen.
Yeah, no. Dean Kamen is very much alive. All right. So we are out of town. That was really fun. Stay inside. It's really, really flipping hot out. And we'll be back in next week. Bye.
See you next week.